I had been up all night. I was throwing a party, a big reception of the American election. We had invited 700 people of our closest friends, people who had worked over. I had worked over the class course. I feel like there are people who want to get in. Is that wrong, or is that some people going to the library? Maybe not. They're waving through the window. I don't know. But these are people who I had worked for the last 4 years to build relationships with. People who actually really loved the United States, actually. I looked in their faces that morning, having not slept, and I saw a tremendous amount of anxiety. I saw a tremendous amount of fear because we had just elected Donald Trump president of the United States. And in the days and weeks and months that followed, I reflected back over the course of various chapters in my life. I thought back to the moment that I first met Barack Obama. I first met Barack Obama in January 2007. It was at a reception at Teddy Kennedy's Senate office. And I met this man, and I had a 30-second conversation with him. It felt like 15 minutes. And I said that this is the man that I want to work for. He is the kind of transformational leader that I actually thought could bring people into the process and also try to impact real positive change around the globe. I thought about the moment where I was living in Los Angeles and quit my job in the entertainment industry. And I walked into John Kerry's presidential campaign office. And I said, please put me to work. Because I am frustrated with the state of the world. I'm frustrated with the direction of the country. And I don't care if you pay me or not. But please, please, please put me to work. I thought about the fact that when I was in high school, I was 17 years old, and I heard Paul Tsongas speak as a presidential candidate in 1992. And there was an authenticity and a sincerity and a fire about him that I loved, that got me to hold yard signs, signs on the side of the road. The first candidate I ever held signs for on the side of the road was Paul Tsongas. And I thought about growing up right here in Massachusetts with my mom and my dad and my brothers and sisters, and my dad sitting me down at about 8 years old and watching documentaries about John F. Kennedy and saying we're never going to have another leader like him. And then going back to that room in Copenhagen, looking at those distressed faces and thinking about my ambassadorship, thinking about the way that I had talked about the United States, thinking about how I had talked about our transformation on things like renewable energy, thinking about how we had talked about our transformation on things like healthcare, thinking as a gay ambassador, thinking about talking about our transformation on LGBT rights, on immigration, on alliances, on just climate change more broadly, on green jobs, on Cuba, on Iran, issue after issue after issue. And I looked into the faces of the Danes and Americans who were standing there that morning, and I realized that I could not have the same conversation today that I had yesterday, that the United States had changed in some ways. And I knew that I had to go back home, and I knew I had to step up. I knew that I had to throw my name on the ballot. And so I came back home, and in November of last year, I declared my intention to run for this congressional seat. And I'm going to talk just briefly about the campaign that I am going to run, and then my favorite part of this, of course, is just to answer your questions and to open it up for conversation. I'm running because I fundamentally believe that trust is broken between people and institutions. You see it everywhere you go. You knock on doors, as we have done in this district, and you get people answering the door that says, they say, I don't vote anymore. And I ask them why, and they say, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not I vote for you or somebody else, it doesn't impact my life anymore. And you see it in every part of life. You see it even with the most engaged people. The people who are just sitting here in this room. I bet there are plenty of people who are sitting here in this room who do not believe that your government, that your politicians are fighting for you. You have some real good ones. You have Jamie Eldridge and Nikki Tsongas, so you have some real good ones here. But in most parts of this district, you have lots of people who actually believe that they're not being fought for as hard as they need to be. And we've got to change that. We've got to breathe trust back into the system. We've got to breathe new life back into the system. And because of that, We need to elect a new generation of political leaders that have the kind of experience, that understand the system, but can actually build the institution back up. I fundamentally hope that we can elect this God-willing blue wave that is coming in November. If it is, I hope that these people elected are the opposite of the Tea Party. The Tea Party moved to Washington to burn the house down. Donald Trump came to Washington to drain the swamp, famously. I don't want to do that. I believe in these institutions. Like Alexandra, I worked in the government as well and actually believe in it, and I've seen the magic of it. And I want to go to Washington and actually empower the system. Breathe new life into it, strengthen it. It is wounded now, and we need to build it back up. I am, having worked at the top levels of politics and the top levels of government, I've seen this. I've seen it from the inside, and I've seen it from the outside. And I think I have the kind of perspective and experience to actually truly impact that debate in Washington. And above and beyond all else, this is what drives me. I've fought for the entirety of my professional life to try to make society a little bit better for the people who live in it. From the moment I quit my job when I was in my late 20s and actually started volunteering for politics, and every day since. And even though I never, ever, ever imagined that I'd be putting my name on a ballot like I am right now, I love this work. I love what we are doing right now, and you can't help but be fired up when you travel around this district and meet the men and women, out there. Briefly about the campaign, several of my staff, my team are here tonight, Dean and Phil and Dan and Ben. I am here with you, but I regret that I'm not in our headquarters in Lowell tonight, because in our headquarters in Lowell we have 20 or so young volunteers making phone calls into the district in English and in Spanish, engaging voters. Because I want to run the most modern and the most old-fashioned campaign at the same time. The most modern because we want to invest in the technology to identify where the voters are and get and actually reach out to you, and of course use social media and video and all the rest. But the most old-fashioned because I think we win. I think we win this race with handshakes and eye contact and conversations and phone calls and door knocking. And that's where we're going to try to invest our money and our resources and our human energy, because we have to bring politics back to its purest form, which is the human relationship. So that's what we want this campaign to be about. I will stop there and actually not dive into all the issues, because I imagine the issues will come up during question and answer. I'm very opinionated, so happy to talk to you about any of that. And open it up for Q&A. But thank you so much. Thanks for being here, and thanks for listening. Yes. Thanks. Yeah.
My name is Carolyn Gutierrez, and I live in Boxboro. And as a gay man, I am sure you know what disenfranchisement is. And so I am 75 years old. I've reached an age where all the politeness I learned as a Southern woman is gone.
Where are you from?
So I am an angry woman because of the misogyny I saw in the campaign. And I listen to you and I respect you, and I'm sure that since you are an Obama appointee that I would heartily be able to support you. However, in your presentation, I noticed that you listed all the men who had been inspirational for you. And so here I am looking at a white male. I told you I wasn't going to be blonde. And so what is it that you're going to be able to do for me and for other women and the women's issues that really are societal issues but nobody recognizes? So why should I, as a white woman, vote for a white man who has just listed all men, who has a staff of all men here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But
how
no,
can I earn my vote?
I actually completely appreciate that. And of course, the staff here is all men, it's true. But we certainly don't have just men on staff. The women are actually doing the real work at the office, which is the truth. I really do appreciate that. It's a great question. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you a few stories. On the morning of the election this year, I texted my mom and my two sisters. I have six nieces, one more on the way. And I texted them this. I said that tomorrow morning you're gonna, and actually texted my brother too, because he has 3 daughters. And I said to them this. I said, tomorrow morning you're gonna be able to wake up and look in the faces of your daughters and tell them for the first time in history that they can be anything they want to be in this world. And of course, then we elected the biggest misogynist president of the United States. I can't convince you, as I am a white man, without a doubt. I can't, and you've only known me for all of 5 minutes. I can't convince you in this moment how much these issues actually mean to me personally. I can speak to you as a gay man who does understand this concept of disenfranchisement, who can certainly identify with being ostracized by the more dominant male components of society. I can talk to you as a gay man who has been written off by all of the expectations based on me as someone who was born and bred in a successful environment here in Massachusetts, and as a straight man, there was a lot expected of me, and the moment I came out, all of those expectations being stripped away because I couldn't possibly live up to them as a gay man. I say that because I understand this. I feel it. The women in my life are not just, they're not just my mom and my sisters, my best friends, and my confidants. They are my heart, my soul. And every moment of my life, I have tried to do everything I could to fight for equality. And I don't mean just choice and equal pay and paid family leave and all that stuff, which of course I would support. Like everybody probably in this race I would support. But I will advocate with my voice and my hands and my feet and my wallet as well. And I will be at the women's marches. I will be shouting from the rooftops as it relates to equality. This just fundamentally has to happen. I will tell you, when I was ambassador, we did this study where we would talk a lot about gender equality because the United States actually is ahead of Europe in a corporate space as it relates to gender equality, which is shocking, but it is. We have more women on corporate boards and whatnot than Scandinavia does. So we would invite businesses in to talk about gender equality, and I actually had the embassy do a study as to the invitations that we would extend from the embassy historically. Who did we invite to our events? Just as simple as that. Who did we invite? Who did we empower? Who did we have to speak? And it was still 2/3 men. And I insisted that we actually make that equal, that we do everything that we possibly can to invite more women, to empower more women, to strengthen female voices. So, without bearing my heart and soul any more than that, I can just tell you as a guy, as a man, as a white man, as a son, as a brother, that these issues mean everything to me. And you have lots of great women to choose from in this race, and I got to be honest with you, I've supported Emily's list. I've always supported more women running for office, and I would never discourage that, ever. In fact, I would only encourage it. But I ask for your support simply because of the values that I do exude. And I'll be bringing with them not just to Washington, but everywhere I go in this world. And that just is who I am. Take it or leave it in that way. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where are you from in the South? Where are you?
South?
Yeah.
Virginia.
Virginia. Yes, sir.
Hi, simple question.
Yes, sir.
I think you answered in one word.
Yeah.
Will you pledge that on your first day or maybe second day in begin working actively, stridently, and incessantly, and single-mindedly for the impeachment of Donald Trump, regardless of what Nancy Pelosi wants you to do, and whether or not the Democrats are in the majority? Simple question.
I absolutely will, but I will also say this, that I think the process has to play itself out. So I think that, I think the world would be a much, much better place without Donald Trump as president. And if I were to, I want to see the articles of impeachment, of course, we all would. We need to see high crimes and misdemeanors, but I promise you, I will be an advocate in every way, shape, or form to get Donald Trump out of that White House. But I will say this, and I'll say this as a caveat, because I do believe that as trust is broken down, and I think, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that trust is broken in society. And a third of the country, maybe even a little bit higher, loves this guy, right? And I fear that if we impeach him without the process working itself out fully, that the torches and the pitchforks come out from that third of the country, and we have got to heal. So without a doubt, I will be an advocate for getting Donald Trump out of the White House, but I will also be a remarkable advocate for the system and letting the Mueller investigation play itself out. And I will say, I think it's true, is that, and this is one of the reasons I'm running and I didn't say this, I think our founding fathers, for all of their magic and whatnot, were prepared for an egomaniacal narcissist to be president of the United States. That's kind of what King George was to them. They were afraid of a monarch coming and seizing power, but they were never prepared for a complicit Congress. And what they have now is a complicit Congress. And I promise you that, I will promise you this, that I will go to Washington and do exactly what I said I would do in my opening, which is breathe life into this institution once again and to do what Congress was initially intended to do, which was to keep a big, hard fact check on the executive branch. So yes. And I can't wait to see the day that Donald Trump doesn't live in the White House. Yeah, but please, follow-up question.
I'm a simple guy.
Yes, sir.
And as feedback for you, so
Yeah.
that you know how you just came across to me, in
Yeah.
case you want to be that way or not, the next time you're asked that question. I hear that as a no to my question. You did not say I would begin working on day one tirelessly for his impeachment. It's very nice that you want to let things play out.
Yeah.
I think they played out pretty well and pretty well.
But you still need the charges. That's the problem.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
That's not the question I asked. That's not the answer.
But I do think, in pushing back on you on this, because I do think it's important that we need a high crime or misdemeanor in order to vote on it. So we need that. We need the charge in order to advocate for impeachment.
If you're still looking for that,
Yeah.
I don't have an end to that sentence, but I don't think one should still need to look for that at this point. I think there's plenty of, this is not a time.
No, I appreciate it, but it is actually important to have this conversation. I actually appreciate it very much. Yeah.
I'm here to listen.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Nobody needs to listen to me.
No. That's not
I
true.
just want to let you know that I heard you and still hear you as saying no is my question.
Okay, that's
You're
definitely
in
not.
the right place,
Yeah.
but that's not the process I'm looking for.
Okay, that's definitely not the intention of my answer, but I appreciate it very much. Yeah, yes, sir.
As a follow-up to that,
Yeah.
what do you say to people who hear about the bots on Facebook and
Yeah.
Twitter that have been amplifying division in the country and playing up on, the likelihood, I guess it's maybe 50-50 now. I agree with you, we need to wait for Mueller to establish whether there really is complicity
Yeah.
or collaboration.
And I don't even need to know that.
There are a
we
lot
need
of
to wait
people
for
that are saying,
publicity.
so what?
Yeah.
So he's a friend of Putin. Why should I care? I'm interested in jobs here.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me.
Because if obstruction of justice happened, because if the President of the United States profited off of some sort of dealings with Russia, and that impacted our political system, that is criminal and impeachable. That's why complicity, I think, is going to be very hard to prove, and it's actually not necessarily where I think the high crime or misdemeanor actually happened. Personally, my personal belief is that firing of Comey was an obstruction of justice, and thus impeachable. But we got to wait for the process to play itself out. This is why I think the process has got to be incredibly open. And there has to be open debate on this. And can't be divisive. We've got to win the country. Like I was born a week before Nixon resigned. We had a bipartisan majority in Congress, understood that what Nixon did was un-American. We've got to make sure that this is not just a partisan issue that we're talking about. This has got to be viewed as un-American, which I think everybody in this room views it as un-American. We've got to convince them of that. If this is going to be a time for the country to heal. That's my opinion here. So I think it's hard to do that. I really do believe it's hard to do that. But I think we got to work to do it, truthfully. Thank you. Yes?
Just building a little bit on that, let's move ahead. Donald Trump decides he wants to not be president anymore, or he is asked to leave the presidency. Now we have President Pence to deal with. And we still have a Republican, please God, maybe get at least one of the portions of Congress. How do we go forward from there? Because I think he is in some
So you're saying
respects-
the Dems have the House at this point?
Well, I'm hoping they get one,
Yeah.
but either the Senate or the House.
Yeah.
But I think or both, would be nice.
That would be
But I
nice.
think Pence is more, because he seems saying he's not as
He's a wolf in sheep's
overtly.
clothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you move forward beyond that?
Yeah. I think the thing about, people ask me a lot, so my politics are actually probably closer overall to Trump's than they are to Pence's. Which is crazy. Well, no, only because I think Trump, I don't know what he is. I don't know what he stands for as a politician. We know that Pence is a far right fascist. I think he's been made that very, very clear. That being said, I would probably prefer to have Pence as president than Trump. Why? Because I think there's a lack of, that there would be a devil you know in Pence, that there might not be a devil you know in Trump. That's my personal opinion. So my point here is that I think you still advocate for trying to remove Trump from office in every way, despite the fact that you end up with Pence, who politically may be completely counter to everything we believe, but it's also sort of, you know politically how to combat that in an essence, if we have a strong party. And this is where I think, which is the essence of your question, which is what do we stand for? How do we counter this? And this is where, if there's any opportunity right now for leadership, we've got to stand for something. We can't just be the anti-Trump party. That's got to be the baseline. It's the easiest conversation to have. The easiest conversation to have is to Trump bash. I do it all day long. For a year, I was beating my heads against the wall with the tweets. Nowadays, what I think we need to do as a party is establish big, bold, aspirational vision. We need to stand for that. And that's how you counter a Trump or a Pence presidency. In my mind, it's easier to counter a Pence presidency that way because it's not as chaotic. And let's stand for single payer. Let's stand for green jobs. Let's stand for immigration reform. Let's stand for a hike of the minimum wage. Let's stand for all of these big fat infrastructure spending bill. And let's put it out there. If there's not another time for a sort of 21st century version of a New Deal that we should be presenting as our party right now, I can't imagine another chapter in history that would not be more ripe for that kind of political leadership. And we are not seeing it from our party, and it's frustrating. Let's do it. And that's what I mean when I say the next generation of political leaders coming to Washington in November and actually standing for the system, standing for it. Make people believe in government again. They've got to. We've got to make people believe in this again. Because right now it's toxic. And we can't continue that way. So that's how I believe. I think you counter Trump or Pence with a positive message that is aspirational, that gets people's hearts and minds, and doesn't divide us like they've been doing for so long. Yes, ma'am.
Rufus.
Oh, 4 minutes left. Okay, I'll try to talk quicker. Yes, yes.
Just follow up on that. What then is the message? You have so many different audiences, the third of the country, where we need the healing. What is the message to them? It's going to be different than for an independent or a Democrat who voted.
Yeah.
So what do you think we should stand for?
So let me
Beyond
use
the issues.
Sure. So let me say this as someone who's looking to represent the 3rd District of Massachusetts. I believe the 3rd District of Massachusetts is gerrymandering at its best. And some of you have heard me say that before. And what do I mean by that? We have cities, we have suburbs, we have very rural areas, all of which the interests are very, very different. But when you travel this district, when you travel, you could be in Lawrence or Concord or Winchendon, all of these communities I've been in over the course of the last few days, yes, the conversation you have in Acton Boxboro might be different than what you have in Lawrence, but there are fundamental truths. There's still things that we all have in common. Healthcare comes up everywhere. Student loan debt comes up everywhere. Infrastructure comes up everywhere. Green jobs comes up everywhere. And yes, I'm mostly talking to a Democratic primary constituency when I do this, but I believe this. I believe it with all my heart, and I could be an idealist, and I am an idealist and an eternal optimist, but I believe that you can deliver that message more broadly, and I think you can deliver that message nationally. You maybe not get the more conservative Republicans to sign on to the fact that, I believe that we need to ban assault weapons. I believe that we need to do it. Absolutely. You're not going to get conservative Republicans to sign on to that. But I still do believe that we can deliver this message. I think we can deliver a message of universal health care, of relieving student loan debt, of green jobs, of a big fat infrastructure spending bill, when the government actually invests, not this crazy one that Trump just put out a few days ago, but something that's big and bold and aspirational. Not everybody agreed with the New Deal. They didn't. But we got their support because it was as if the government was trying to address real human problems. And they saw them, they were trying to address them, and doing it with good intentions. And I feel like we need to do that again. And that's how we communicate with independents, and even some more left-leaning Republicans. One more question, maybe? Yes, ma'am.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Where do you stand on the 28th Amendment? What would you do to get one proposed to overturn Citizens United so that the NRA can't just buy all these seats?
Sure.
And keep the gun laws where they are?
Do you know America's Promise, Jeff
Yes,
Clements
yes,
in Concord?
yes.
Yeah, I've signed his pledge. I'm a big fan.
Okay.
I think anyone who tells you money in politics is not a corrupting influence is lying to your face. I say this as the most successful political fundraiser in United States history. I raised over $1 billion for Obama. I say that just so you know exactly how I feel about this. I understand it firsthand. We also tried to do it in the cleanest possible way that we could, meaning we took not a dime, didn't take a dime of corporate money, didn't take a dime of lobbyist money, didn't take a dime of PAC money. But there was still too much money in this race. This was the re-election race in 2012. And without a doubt, we need to get it out. And especially the corporate money. The problem with Citizens United, and people ask me, sir, will you support overturning Citizens United? Absolutely. That's the easiest question in the world. But how do you do it? The truth of the matter is you need to do it one of two ways, a new Supreme Court or a constitutional amendment. Jeff Clements and America's Promise is saying they'll do it with a constitutional amendment. I will fight for that with every breath in my body. It is an uphill battle to amend the Constitution. I think everybody needs to understand that, but understand what they're fighting for. That this is a threat to democracy, that Citizens United was a threat to democracy. It was actually at the Democratic National Committee, working at the Democratic National Committee when that Supreme Court decision came down. And we saw it as a threat then. I see it as a threat now. And we just need to fight it, but it's hard. I mean, it's hard to say that we got to wait for 2 Supreme Court justices to die before we can then have a Democratic president if we're really going to do something about this. But thank you. Listen, thank you. Oh, look at that. Ellen, my timing was perfect this time, unlike the last one. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love these questions. I could do this all night. Anybody wants to talk more, I'm around, or you can find me online or through any one of my staff or whomever. So thanks for coming out tonight. We should have done this outside. It's like 75 degrees outside at the end of February. But thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And
Yeah. Thanks.
number 2, I can't go yet. Another number 1.